What's going on, fam? This is Dr. Jalisa Barnes welcoming you to my channel. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can stay up to date on all my new content and videos. If you've been here before, welcome back. Today I want to do a quick video on IEP etiquette. If you don't know what the letters IEP stand for, it is an individualized educational program. It is specifically for students who have been identified as having an educational disability. It's important to note and distinguish because a child can have a medical disability but not be considered educationally disabled. There are 13 educational classifications of disabilities, and the child has to meet one of those classifications, at least one of those classifications, in order to qualify for an IEP. Typically, the process is either the school or a parent makes a referral by requesting an evaluation in writing. The school conducts its evaluation, and then at the end of the evaluation, a meeting gets held. It is colloquially referred to as an IEP meeting. I served as the district rep for most of the schools that I worked in as a school psychologist, and I came across there were some very interesting people who work in public education. There's just interesting people in the world. There's interesting parents, interesting students. But I would come across some people in meetings, and part of the district representative's role is to facilitate the meeting and make sure that it keeps moving and that it goes in a timely manner, make sure that there's equity of voice, make sure that every person represented is heard, because it is supposed to be a team effort to build this IEP. So in my experience, IEP meetings some of them can be very pleasant. If everybody's on the same page, if everybody has a pretty clear understanding of who the kid is and what the kid needs, it can be like a very cool, pleasant conversation, and everybody walks away feeling accomplished and feeling like, yes, we got what we need for this baby. Sometimes it can be tense based on parents' understanding of the process, sometimes even the other professionals' understanding of the process. And sometimes it can just be downright annoying. I'm just gonna run off this short list of pet peeves that I had working as a school psychologist, and really on the school's behalf. So I tend to kind of always come from the viewpoint of the school. I recognized early on that, one, we don't really have control over what happens outside of the school. So we don't have control over how receptive a parent is. We don't have control over how much the parent knows, or what they will accept. We don't have control over that, but we always have control over how we present ourselves to a parent as the school. All of these pet peeves are really going to be on the school's behalf. So my number one pet peeve on behalf of the school is lateness. To set a meeting with a parent, and prior to the pandemic, meetings were always held in person. Sometimes a parent would have to participate by phone, but it was heavily encouraged that parents would come into the building and sit down with the team to review their child's IEP. I cannot tell you how many times I would have a parent waiting, and we're waiting on a teacher, or if it's a school where the administrator is required to be there, we're waiting on the administrator. And I'm not talking like 5 minutes, I'm talking like 10, 15 minutes. And I'm like, this parent has taken off work or taken time away from their day, come and sit with the team to support their child, and you have the nerve to be 10, 15 minutes late. It's not okay. I gave teachers leeway, obviously, because teachers can't leave their class. So the only way they can leave their class is if they have coverage. If there's nobody to cover them, then they can't come. I also noticed sometimes, particularly with administrators, they would kind of use lateness as a power play. So I would start a meeting and the administrator would walk in like 15, 20 minutes late, disrupting the whole process. I mean, I find it so unprofessional. Not even just to the parent, but to the others around you. There are so many times a meeting should have taken maybe 30 minutes. Most IEP meetings really shouldn't take more than 30 to 45 minutes if everybody has come prepared. But they get dragged on, or somebody has to leave early because somebody was late and they were so late. Some attendance is required for the IEP to be considered legal, for it to be considered a legal meeting. So if the general education teacher is late, if the special education teacher is late. That disrupts the proceedings. So be on time. If you set a meeting date, be on time. My next pet peeve is dumping on the parent. So like I said, if everybody comes to the meeting and they are prepared, meaning that they have their talking points, they know exactly where the students' strengths and weaknesses are, it doesn't take that long to get through it. There are times when school professionals would take advantage of the IEP meeting to essentially dump on the parent. I will never forget, I had an IEP meeting, and this child happened to be in an integrated classroom, meaning that they had a general education teacher and a special education teacher with them in the room at all times, right? And these teachers were very unhappy with the parent. Parent did not speak English, or she wasn't fluent in English. It turned out she actually had an older child who also had a disability in addition to the child with the learning disability. She was essentially raising the kids on her own, working, the whole nine. So she really could not support her kid with his homework, but she did try. So anyway, preparing for this meeting, these teachers roll up in my office and they're like, listen, just so you know, for tomorrow, this is a very difficult parent. We've tried talking to her and, she laughs in our faces. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do that. I mean, really piling on to this parent, right? And I have no idea what I'm walking into. So I walk into the meeting the next day. It is this mild-mannered lady. When they talked about, she was laughing. I mean, it wasn't haha, you're stupid kind of laughing. It was exhaustion and, because they were suggesting things. One, there were things that she had tried, and we had an interpreter. So our social worker at the time, she spoke Spanish, so she was able to interpret. But it was very clear that this lady was really actually trying her best. She had this defeated, exhausted look in her eyes. And these teachers, they were like, you don't sign his progress reports. You don't help him with his homework. You don't do this. And I literally had to say, stop, wait. And they got mad at me for checking in with the parent. It was like, wait, how, are you understanding what's going on? How are you feeling about this? And she's explaining her side. And I'm just sitting here looking at these teachers. I had to have my professional mask on my face. But I was like, y'all better be glad she didn't punch you in the face. Because really? And let me make this plug. This is my channel. This is my plug. Okay? I have a very serious problem with people who are not from a certain community coming into a community to serve that community without taking the time to at least try to empathize and understand what that community is about. I was working in Queens, New York. The majority of the students who attended that particular school were of Hispanic descent. Some black, some white, but the white students were, the percentage was much, much lower than the black and brown kids. These were teachers who were palm-colored. They did not live in New York City. They lived on Long Island. So here's my thing. And they're not from that community, and it happens so much, and we've seen it. If you looked at my previous videos on, trauma in black and brown communities, understand that so much of that trauma comes from people who are supposed to be serving them, but they're not from these areas, and they're not from these communities, and they don't take the time to try to understand the nuances that go into these communities and these populations. And then you have a situation where you're sitting in an IEP meeting where you're supposed to be trying to help this parent understand what's going on with her kid, and you're using that as an opportunity to dump on her from your position of privilege. That's what pissed me off. That is what pissed me off. That made me so mad. So I'm like, you over here so indignant on the kid's behalf. And I'm like, but that's his mother. So if you're not willing to help his mother, then you can't say that you're willing to help this kid. Because she clearly needed help, you know? And you're really taking that opportunity to bash her and dump on her. And that made me want to fight. Don't dump on parents. Don't use those opportunities and meetings. If you have a beef with a parent, that's not a parent-teacher conference. That is not your time to, really, you shouldn't be dumping on anybody anyway, because unless you live with somebody, you have no idea what is going on behind closed doors. You don't know what effort it is taking for somebody to get up every day and function. Get the kids up, get them dressed, send them to school. Don't do that. And don't let me see it. Don't let me see it, because you're going to be mad at me. Only focusing on the negatives of the student, that is a pet peeve. Again, it takes all kinds to make the world go round, and there are interesting students. Some of them may have some very severe behavioral issues. I noticed that administration really only tends to get involved. And when I say get involved, they want to be at the meetings. They want to be kept abreast of the evaluation process. They want to know what the recommendations will be. And it's almost always about the kids who have behavior problems. And they become so focused on the problem that this child is presenting, they don't talk about their strengths. They don't talk about their goal in those meetings is to convince that parent that their child is so horrible that they need to go to another school, or they need to go into a more intensive special education program. And it's all about getting this parent on board and convincing them that your kid needs this. And really, it's about their behavior 9 times out of 10. Or if they are just so limited. And it's like, listen, that's the whole point. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole point of the evaluation, is to identify what their limitations are, but also what their skills and what their strengths are, and how you can incorporate that into their learning process. So if you're not going to acknowledge their strengths and their skills and what they are able to do, and you're only gonna, I have literally sent teacher interview forms. Oh my gosh. So part of the evaluation process is to have the teacher fill out a form, basically highlighting the kids, again, their strengths, their limitations, their behavior, their adaptive skills, how independent they are. I have literally had teachers fill out an interview form and send it back to me with the strengths section as blank. How do you spend months with a child and say that they have absolutely no strengths? How? And I would have to go back to them and be like, you need to fill this section out. You need to figure out something that this kid could do. Because there's always something. There is always something. And then they go into the meeting, and again, like, your guns are blazing. And again, I get that it's a rock and a hard place, because teachers are under tremendous pressure for their students to perform. So if you have a student in the classroom who is disruptive, you have a student in the classroom who's not making academic progress, all of that blows back on the teacher. So I understand that desperate feeling, like something has to be figured out, because it's my life on the line right now. It's my paycheck on the line right now. Get it. I get it. But that does not preclude you from still being a professional. Because at the end of the day, it's a job that you're continuing to choose until you choose something else. So as long as you're choosing this job, you need to choose professionalism. See this kid as a person. Even if you are 1000% convinced that and that's partly what it is. A lot of teachers don't want to highlight the strengths because they don't want to give any they don't want to provide any doubt that this kid potentially needs to be moved or needs a more intensive support program. I get it. But at all times, you're a professional, and at all times, you're serving a child. You're serving a family. So be a servant, be a professional. Finally, not letting the parent have a voice. There are so many times when a parent will come in and the school will just like bulldoze them. They'll just run all over them. They'll be like, this is what we see with your kid. This is what we think that they need. Okay, sign here. We're good to go. And unless the parent is assertive, they get swept up in the current. And that's not right. A lot of parents don't know that they can ask questions. I'm on the other side working in private practice, and I work with a lot of children, and their parents often don't think that they have the right to ask questions. They go, well, I don't want to be that parent. I'm like, yo, be that parent. Be that parent, because if the school doesn't think that you know better, they will just tell you what they want to do with your kid, have you sign on the dotted line, and then what happens is things get worse and worse for your kid, and now you have to fight. Nah, be that parent from the beginning. I cannot tell you how many times a kid has come across my desk and the parent would be so like incensed. They would be, they'd be angry, they'd be distrustful, and I'd be like, why am I getting this energy? But then when I start to, whether it's gathering the social history, whether it's looking through the kid's records, I'm like, oh, this parent asked for help 3 years ago. You didn't help the parent. So now the kid continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Now the parent's like, nah, I don't got time. And I'm the newcomer in the situation. I'm like, I've never heard this kid's name before in my life. How and why? Because you're not giving the parent ample time to speak and voice their concerns. You want to do what's best for, and that's ultimately what happens. Some people are there for the best interest of the student, and some people are there to preserve the best interest of the school. And the fact that those are not mutually inclusive is a very big sign that something is wrong with the school system. Because how is working in the best interest of the child not working in the best interest of the school when the purpose of the school is to educate the child? How? It gotta make sense. It gotta make sense. You know what I'm saying? I used to tell parents all the time, you are the expert in your child. Nobody else sitting here knows your baby like you know your baby. So you have to be the advocate. Like, I'd have parents apologizing to me. Oh, I'm sorry for asking so many questions. I was like, ask your questions. Ask your questions. Because that's your baby. You're the one that has to watch them suffer. You're the one that has to watch them be anxious. You're the one that feels anxious on their behalf. We're going to work. I'm going to work, and then I'm going home. I'm off the clock. You don't get to be off the clock as their parent. So you absolutely better sit up in that meeting and ask any question you need to ask. Okay? Ask your questions. Say what you need to say. Put your plug in. Make sure it gets documented on the record. These are my concerns. You know how many parents have reported that their kids had behavioral issues at home and they got dismissed because, oh, we don't see it in school. At some point, you're going to see it in school. So these are strategies that you can use at home. These are resources if you think he needs to talk to somebody, right? If you ignore it, we're going to see it in school. So I tell parents all the time, I'm like, no, you are the expert on your baby. So you need to make sure you're speaking up. You are their greatest advocate. There's stuff that you're going to see that we just won't see. And that's okay. You know what I'm saying? But it's supposed to be a team effort. And the parents are, to me, honestly, the most important part of the team. Because here's the thing. We can implement everything we want to implement, but if it's not being reinforced at home, then it's a gamble. It really is. If the kid is not motivated within themselves and the parent is not motivated to support the efforts, then we're just doing stuff in school. So I think it really actually behooves us to foster more positive relationships with parents on the school's behalf to make sure that this kid gets everything that they need. So, all right, you guys. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for joining me again. Once again, if you're new to me, hey. If you're old to me, welcome back. Hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you next time. Bye.